Welcome to another Saturday live stream. It's Paul Toby here from jazzmental.com. Thank you for joining me for another Saturday session. Great to see you all here. And for those of you that are here early, just a quick shout out. Let me say hello to a lot of regulars. Really nice to see all of you back. So let's go quickly through the list. Fritz, Viola, Claudio, Rich, Peter, Serge, Bienvenue, Steve, Amoti, Lisa, and Ben, and everyone else who's joining us now or momentarily. Thank you for coming. These Saturday sessions would not be great without you. We are talking about an interesting topic today, and normally in these sessions we go with scales and chords and the technical aspects of jazz, and that's typically what most players come to these sessions for, but I wanted to take a little bit of a detour on that and share with you a little bit about what we call the art of musical surrender, which, of course, we all recognize what jazz improvisation is, and if you don't, it's basically creating music in the moment, original music that may be based on a standard set of changes or not. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating music on the fly based on some rules, and other rules are typically meant to be broken. Of course, it depends on who's making the rules. If you look back at some of the great improvisers like Miles Davis, typically what they do is they let the music lead them. And that's one thing that I think people miss when it comes to improvisation. We tend to be so focused on making the correct notes, correct chords, following the changes. But once you transcend that, people like Miles would search for the sound and follow the music around. And he did it physically. He would follow the music around the stage. He would look for the place on the stage. If you ever seen him play, and if you haven't, go check out some of his videos. Obviously, he's been gone for many years now, but his videos, of course, are still on YouTube. Go check them out. Watch him point his trumpet at the floor looking for the best resonance on the stage. And that wasn't just the best sound. He's also looking to hear the music that's coming at him from other players. He would move close to the drummer to hear rhythms, or close to the bass player to kind of hear what they're up to. And this, of course, applies to all improvisers. John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Tommy Flanagan. I mean, I could give you a list of 100 musicians. I'm not going to do that because you all have your favorites. But the goal with great improvisation is to obviously perform at a level where the music is just that. It's pleasing and it's challenging to the ear, but following it is the most important thing. Where does the music take you? Where does, for example, we're going to be playing Body and Soul, which is a very famous jazz ballad and one of the most important jazz standards of our time, as a ballad, of course. And I'll be playing that, and what I want to do is I want to embody the philosophy of improvisation that we'll be discussing today. So I have some listening for you to do, and some listening exercises when I play that. While we're doing that, I'm going to post a link to the sheet music in the chat area. Now, a couple of things about this. One, we're probably going to get a pretty good size audience today, so if the website's a little slow in downloading, I apologize for that. Give it the time that it takes. I'll pin that actually to the top of the chat so you can see it easier. There you go. It's at the top in the little white section, I think. That's what it would look like on your computer. I'm not too sure. or your phone, or however you're joining us today. And for those of you that join us, like Philip, Allison, Jay Smith, Don, just around the corner, nice to see you, and James. And for those of you that just listen and don't really participate in the chat, welcome to you as well. Go grab the sheet music. I'll post a quick example of it and tell you what's up with it. So I've been pretty busy lately. Many of you know my wife Nancy and have been on these live streams before, and you know that she monitors the chat, and she's actually on the chat today, but she's in a hospital doing so. It's been a rough 5 years. I mean, most of the 5 years, the last 5 years since we got Nancy's cancer diagnosis have been good. We've managed it okay, but the last few months is really kicking her butt. And I got to tell you, without Nancy, my jazz career and everything that I've done in it, all of the touring and all of the albums and everything started with Nancy asking me one simple question when we got together 32 years ago. She said, "What is it that you want out of your life?" And I said, "I just want to be a jazz musician." And so that's what we did. Over the years, I've refined that to include successful jazz musician, and even when I left the music business and got into the business world, Nancy was there, and she's been my muse and my constant source of encouragement. And I just want to say, Nancy, I love you, and I'll see you later. Right after this, I'll be coming to the hospital to visit you, of course, just like I do every day. And I just wanted everybody to just kind of say a little prayer for Nancy, because we've been in this thing a long time together, and I want to see many more years. And so she's struggling right now, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to her. She's actually monitoring the chat, so she'll probably say a few words. I think it's important to talk about stuff like that, because in the context of today, as we talk about more of the soft skills about playing music, you have to think about what inspires you. And a lot of what inspires me in music is my wife Nancy, and I wouldn't be able to do it without her. So let me play Body and Soul. I know that on your screen it's just a lead sheet, but if you take a look at the chord changes, or at least the first few chord changes, you'll notice that they're not typical for Body and Soul. So I've actually reharmonized it and put the basic set of changes there that I would like you to hear. I'll probably deviate from that because I'm going to be improvising. And if you actually download it, on the third page, there's a little note that says, "I owe you a full transcription." And the reason why I don't have it is because our great transcriber, PJ in Poland, hasn't finished it yet. So when he finishes it, I will send it to you absolutely free of charge, just the head section. And there is a solo section, and you can think about maybe helping and supporting the channel for that part, but I will send it, the head section, to you, which I'm about to play, probably not too far off what's going to be transcribed. And what I want you to listen for as you're taking a look at the sheet music and just following the changes through, what I want you to really listen for is a couple of things. Number one, watch and really hear, and if you have to close your eyes to do this, please do it, but I want you to hear the time that it takes for the music to get to me. So a chord goes out, a phrase goes out, a line goes out, and I'm listening to that and I'm reacting to that phrase, pulling me in the direction of that phrase. And that's the way it progresses. It's like one phrase to the next phrase, to the next chord, to the next chord. You're constantly listening to what's coming out, and you're changing your perspective instantly based on what came out. And so listen for the time that it takes to do that, because that's not something that you can just do without thinking. It's a listening process. So that's how I want you to hear it. Just listen for the little pauses. I'm my fingers and my heart and my brain are figuring out what to do next based on what just came. So that's number one. Number two is you'll notice that I'm not concerned at all. I hope it'll come across that way. I'm not really concerned at all with making notes or not making mistakes. I always had this philosophy in music that said, make the best music possible, and whatever comes out, comes out. That was what was meant to be. And so every note and every chord that I play is meant to be. And I don't want you to get hung up on the fact that you, as a player, can avoid mistakes. There will be mistakes, but you won't hear them and you won't notice them because whatever you just played, you react to and you make it sound right. So those two things, listen for the time that it takes, and to listen for the reactions to what's being played if indeed it's not perfect. And that's what we call imperfect improvisation. This is absolutely 100% imperfect, but yet, isn't it perfect like that? Let's play the tune, and then we'll discuss it. Keep your questions, listen and hear the questions in your head as you would ask them. We're not going to go technical today. In fact, the technical questions will probably pass by. I'm really looking to kind of get to the heart of music here. And for those who've joined us, Michelle and Steve and others, here's the tune. Let's play it, and we'll get right back to the discussion. So I guess you heard some of that. I mean, the comments, thank you so much. You're very kind. I think one of the first things that I want to say about that particular performance is I don't remember a lot of it. I'm very thinking about my wife Nancy, and I'm thinking about the tune, but I'm not harping on anything that went right or anything that went wrong. I'm just letting the music sort of flow out of me. And if I ever had one wish for all of you, this is that at some point in your life to be able to feel what that's like, to just freely improvise. And I mean, it's obviously based on some kind of harmony and framework, but to just kind of let music come out of you without any sort of, gee, I hope I'm playing it correctly, or I hope this is a line that people appreciate. I'm not really thinking about that. I certainly wasn't thinking about being judged or anything like that. I'm just making the best music I can in the moment, just from a place of just complete grounded and centered. I remember to breathe. I don't know if you watch me play, but my eyes are closed a fair amount of the time. I'm breathing. I'm just really just enjoying the moment. And that's really what I wanted to discuss today. So the first thing is, and for those of you, again, that have commented on the playing, I really appreciate that. I hope it I hope the volume and the sound is good for you. It's as good as it can get, I think, for these types of live streams. It's not easy miking a piano and making it sound great over YouTube, but we're doing the best we can. So thank you. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the role of silence. And I did briefly talk about this at the beginning. And I think you heard in a lot of cases, like for example, when I'm doing, there's an inner voice going on here, listen. And I'm listening to the interaction of these inner voices with the melody and see how they react to those, and just listening to the way that the music forms itself as it moves through the changes. And so silence is one of our best friends, and I don't think we give a lot of importance to silence. I have tinnitus, so I know what it means to never have silence, but I'm not really thinking about that in my head as I'm playing. I'm really thinking about the role of the music as it flows, and just trying to, with simple little chord changes, just to make music. And that was nothing more than B flat minor to E flat 7 to E flat minor to A7 to D. And that's all it is. They're just simple changes, but finding through silence the progression of notes to make it sound melodic. So even when you get to the end of the tune, now we've got a couple of bars of nothing, which nothing meaning no melody. So what do we do with that? I'm making melodies within the melodies. And you can only do that by really hearing the space between notes. And sometimes there's not a lot of space, but there's definitely a lot of space between chords. And it's really important to just listen, because especially with inner voices, they'll guide you. And you can literally like take any finger and just move it. And just find out which makes the best sound. And if you listen carefully, those notes will tell you if that's a good direction. Just reading some of the comments here. Yes, Allison, that's exactly what I'm saying. She says, surrender to our love of music and just enjoy whatever we've got. Yes. Now, in that, Allison, I think it's important to always be searching for broader sounds, more dissonance, more complexity, just beauty in dissonance. Because when you create dissonance, that resolve is what really sounds. Listen to how dissonant that is. Right? But within the context and the framework of what's around it. Resolve, dissonance, resolve, dissonance. And I think it's really important to hear that and strive for more dissonance, strive for more complexity, but yet don't let it get away from you. Don't let it get to the point where it's all dissonant. I mean, you could play the tune dissonantly all the time, but the ear needs a break from that. So let's try that. I mean, it's just too much. And so it's those dissonance to resolve that creates great jazz. You know? And that's really what you want to be listening for. So that's the first thing. From, I think, the art of surrender means just active listening, and the role of silence is take the time that it takes to hear before it happens the next chord, the next note, the next line. Let me give you a really broad example, or exaggerated example of silence in a solo. So once we started off the tune, we were playing obviously the tune, but then when we got to the end of the tune, we had this transition. And now we're into soloing, right? Notice there's silence, right? This is, to me, this is a chord. It's still silence because where does it go from here? And then slide into it. And then this note dictates the next note. And then you could just throw some dissonance by half step. Again. Where does it go? Down or up? So that's a pretty exaggerated thing because I'm waiting for that next note. And in that, there's freedom in that because there's no mistakes there. It doesn't matter. I can just play all wrong notes and it's still going to sound right. I mean, this is like a C major scale over an A flat 7 sharp 9 chord. It still sounds right because you've got all this dissonance here. Why not add more dissonance to it? So one more time. And as long as it resolves, it sounds fine. So there are no wrong notes in jazz. However, it's how you hear them progress that makes great sound. Okay. So that's number one, role of silence. Are there any, before I move on to a little bit more philosophy of jazz, which obviously this is part of, are there any comments about the role of silence? Let's just see if there... Yes, thank you. Well-known Indian spiritual teacher, yes, Ramana, and silence is the greatest teacher. Absolutely, thank you. I like, and This one person says, I like the spiritual orientation that you apply to the music, which has the effect of coming up with such a creative output. Yeah, I mean, thank you. That's it. That's it right there. It's a creative output. What a great way of putting it. Creative output. I'm creating in the moment through just this whole spiritual concept that says, let go and let it happen. I think a lot of us are just so dead set on math, and we've talked about this before. People think that music is just math. There's no math to any of that. I'm certainly not thinking about, that this is an A flat. I mean, the only thing I did was try to describe this chord to you in the context that you understand it. But when I'm playing it, I'm not even thinking about, I don't even, like I probably in my head, it's not even an A flat chord, even though it is. Right? So I'm just kind of like letting the music flow. Right? So you'll notice in all of that, it's like that was not pre-planned. Everything just flows because of the grasp of harmony that you have within you. That's the hard work that you put in. But at some point, you must get past that in order to be an artist, because that's what painters do. They kind of let the brush guide them. We're letting the palette of 88 keys and the harmonies and the overtones and the scales and the chords, we're letting that guide us. And that's what we're really trying to get to. So thank you for that comment. Yeah, I mean, Ben, I get what you're saying, and I love the capitalization. It's like, yeah, let's go for it, right? It's what I pray to happen with my music. I mean, there is intention exercises that you can do. For example, I don't know if you've ever heard of VAX. So I do VAX pretty much every morning. It's like, I intend for this thing to come into my life. I'm in the process of attracting this thing, and I'm following my fingers around the room 5 times. And then it's like ears, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic, spiritual. These are exercises that I do just to kind of focus on what I really want, what my true intention is. And I appreciate all of these comments. It's a little difficult to discuss this sometimes because words are inadequate. I think we all recognize that. And for some of you that obviously there's Spanish people here and French people and other languages, Italian for sure. I mean, we have language to express ourselves, but even in any language, it's insufficient to talk about what's in your soul. And we try to describe it the best we can, and obviously English is my first language, so that's the one we're going to use. And I just wanted you to hear that and understand that, because I'm choosing my words as carefully as I can to explain something which is unexplainable, which is really the surrender part that's important. All great comments. Thank you. How important is a deep understanding of the harmonic structure of the tune? Well, I think, of course, with jazz, and I promised that I wouldn't do anything technical today, really. I mean, I talked about a couple of chord changes. How important is it? It's, I would say, paramount. It's ultra important. But only to get you to the point where you understand the palette you're using and can create beyond that. I like to think of just in this particular key of D flat. Obviously, there's a lot of flat stuff going on. I like to think of it like, what does this key give me in terms of its sound? Because every key is different. So, for example, when we get into the bridge, it's in D. It's a much brighter key. That's just the nature of harmonics. Versus D flat. It's just a more... it's just a more darker key. I think the more flats you put in, the darker it is. The more sharps you put in, the brighter it is. And you're thinking, well, what about, 4 sharps versus 4 flats? Is there a difference between those two? Yeah, there absolutely is, in the sounds that they make. So that's what I'm trying to do with every tune. I'm trying to be guided by the sound of that key, or whatever the key of the moment is. And so, yeah, it's very important to have a deep understanding of the harmony of the tune. But at some point, like I say, you have to transcend that. Now, that may be years for some of you. It might be days for others. It's important to talk about, though, because that's the goal. In my experience, if you're going to pick a goal, you might as well make it big. I think, was it Jim Rohn said, if you're going to think, might as well think big. So big in music is, especially in jazz, is the creator dream, that ultimate surrender that allows you to throw out and push out music without a tremendous amount of thought, because the thought has come before it, and now we're moving beyond thought into feel and heart set versus mindset. Can't get there without a deep understanding of the changes. So thank you for the comment and question. And Nancy, you're so sweet. From a hospital bed, she writes, be in a state of allowing. Don't judge your creative output in the moment. Let it happen. And very wise words from a very brave lady. And it's true. You have to create in the moment without judgment. You can't be thinking, oh, I just made a mistake. Oh, that chord was wrong. Oh, I didn't mean to go that way. And whatever way it goes is the way that it goes. Now, obviously, we have the question about how important it is to understand the underlying harmony and structure. Very important. But when you get into it, there is nothing wrong with going any direction you like. You can take it as simply out or as far out as you want, but always be listening to hear the direction that it's going, because it will guide you. Yes, hence the name Body and Soul. That's why it's not only Valentine's Day next week, but it's one of the most important ballads. And if you've ever looked at the words for Body and Soul, I think it's important to do that. But body and soul, that's what this music is. It's soulful music. And it does not matter whether you're swinging it or you're playing it a ballad. It's still, and let's try swinging it a little bit, we're going to get a completely different sound. course, I apologize for the overhead mic to go a little crazy on me. The vocal mic fell over when I was moving it back, and then the other one fell over. So I apologize for the beginning of that, but even that doesn't really faze me. Just fix it, move on. And like, even if that happened in the middle of a presentation, a lot of what people will do in nervous anxiety is to kind of make excuses for everything. In the moment, I just like, let it flow by. I'll be sorry for it later kind of thing. And I didn't even think about it through the whole thing until I got it done, when I had to actually search for this microphone. So you can see, even with swing, it's like it's unfolding. I'm not thinking about licks or specific phrases or anything. I'm just letting the music unfold in the moment, and it doesn't matter the direction that it goes in. You could start from up to down. Stay here for a while. Let's go up. It just guides you. You have to listen to it in order for it to make sense. If you don't listen to it, you'll never get to that point that says, wow, this is music. It's just so delightful and joyous and profound, these sounds that you can make. And that's what I love about jazz. It just has this limitless character to it that allows you to go in any direction, and whatever direction that is the direction of the moment. It's not about the destination, it's about how you get there that matters. I would just like to give a quick question to you. Is for those of you that are more advanced, and of course it doesn't really matter whether you are or not, so for anyone really is this question, but specifically maybe for the people that have played concerts or for the people that are making albums, things like that, have you ever been in a situation where you're playing and the music is unfolding on its own? I remember one very specific, and you can share that with me in the chat, I'd love to hear it, but I personally remember one specific example. I was doing a small tour in Japan, a couple of week tour, and a couple of days before the main gig, which was the Yokohama Jazz Festival, which is a very famous festival in Japan, outside of Tokyo, I had my thumb slammed in a car door. The door opens like this, so it got slammed in this part by the interpreter as I was going in to do a masterclass at the music university there. And it turns out it wasn't broken. I mean, they took really good care of me, went to the hospital, all that kind of stuff to kind of protect themselves. But it wasn't broken, so I just kind of iced it and just kind of kept going with the tour. And then eventually I got to the Yokohama Jazz Festival and I did this gig. And I was absolutely concerned about it before going on stage. But once I got there, I just went, you know what, whatever comes out. And I remember playing things like Lush Life, and I played a lot of my own tunes. I do remember playing, just some tunes. I'm not going to do it, but I do remember playing certain things, but it went by so quickly. And when I listened to it back, because there was a recording of it, when I listened to it, I went, you know what? I don't remember being there. I don't remember playing that. I don't remember struggling through that. I don't remember things I did wrong or did right. I'm just listening back going, that was a really kind of like out-of-body experience. And it was a nice, really good crowd, lots of good energy. It was like over 1,000 people, which was kind of nice. And I had Terry Clark, which he was voted 5th best drummer in the world by Downbeat Magazine one year, on drums, and then I had Jim Vivian on bass, which was kind of nice. Guys from Toronto. But listening to that recording, I still have that recording. I never released it because it wasn't recorded really well. But the playing was just out-of-body stuff. And if you have a story like that, if you could summarize it and share it in the chat area, I'd love to see it. So a couple of philosophical ideas that I'd like to share with you about this specifically. So I believe that music is energy. I think everything is energy. In fact, if you look at an object or anything from a subatomic level, it's basically made up of atoms, which are made up of molecules. Or is it the other way around? Molecules are made up of atoms, which are surrounded by subatomic particles, which are pure energy. So everything in the universe is bound together with this sort of like energy. And at the subatomic level, there is a lot of space between those atoms and molecules. And that's all energy. Everything in the universe is made up of energy. So is thought, so is expression, so is creativity. It's all energy. Music is energy. So I want you to think about this. What we tend to do when we practice is we tend to put a lot of resistance into what comes out because we don't like what we're hearing. And resistance, and there is a saying, whatever you resist will persist. Resistance is futile because it's such a negative amount of energy that you're pumping into, God, I hope I get better. God, I hope one day I'll get better. But as you focus on not being great, you continue to not being great because whatever you resist will persist. So the very first level of energy that you must get to is what we call acceptance. You have to be in complete 100% spiritual, physical, mental, emotional acceptance of where you're at with your music at this particular moment. Because if you don't accept where you are, it's impossible to raise your energy. And the level that you need to raise your energy to get to the point where you're creating effortlessly is a couple of steps up from acceptance. Acceptance is the minimum amount of energy required to move forward. And I think, and yes, I can play Lush Life on the schedule at some point. Thank you. I think acceptance, I mean, anything below acceptance is resistance. And because resistance is negative, the more negative energy you put into where you think you're at, it's never going to get to the level of acceptance. So acceptance is like the minimum energy level you need. Next up from acceptance is what we call enjoyment. Enjoyment means it's something you love to do, and if you find it like work, you should probably just not do it because you'll never get past acceptance to enjoyment. And enjoyment means doing something you love. So accept that there's work involved, but get to the point where that work is enjoyable. And that's a much, much higher level of energy. And then you'll start attracting even higher levels of energy once you get to that point. And the highest level of energy is what we call enthusiasm. Everything I play, everything I do, everything I create, whether it's a YouTube video or just winging it on a live stream like this, everything that's put together to make this possible, to me, is I'm enthusiastic about. I'm enthusiastic about helping you achieve whatever you want to achieve in your life. But I also know that enthusiasm has a formula, and it contains two parts. The first part is enjoyment. So if you get to the second level above acceptance, if you get to enjoyment, you're already halfway there. The only thing that you need to add to that to equal enthusiasm is some kind of goal, like a big goal. And when I mean goal, I don't necessarily mean making your way through the changes of body and soul, although that might be a good interim goal. But to me, the goal would be to perform for others, to help them enjoy your progression. And I think for many people, they will never get to the level of enthusiasm because they just don't think big enough. And one of the key elements of the art of musical surrender is to just think big, because big is an energy that pulls you forward. And that's what I mean by listening. The music pulls you in, pulls you forward. It's pulling you into an area of just absolute enthusiasm for what you're doing, how you're doing it, who's being affected by it, who's listening to it. And you're creating a body of work that has the potential to reach others, which is really why we do music. It's not just for us, it's for others. It's so that others can enjoy it and be inspired by it, be motivated by it, be taught by it, go to school by it, learn from it. And I think that's an area that we all need to get to. We need to recognize that we've been given this gift of music to inspire and motivate and compel others to do something with their lives, to be energetically enthusiastic about what they're doing. And that's what concerts can do. I've seen that happen before. I also tend to choose words that also inspire and that also motivate, which is what I'm trying to share with you today. Again, it's difficult because words are all we have. I wish I could just transplant my energy to yours. But the creative energy of music is really just, obviously, everything that I've talked about today, but really just enthusiasm for the music. It's energy. And so the highest level of energy that we can emit is enthusiasm. You ever been in a room with an enthusiastic person and you'll notice how you are drawn to them, how they kind of magnetize the room? That's somebody who is not only loving what they do, but is also creating something in their life that is bigger than they thought possible. That's what enthusiasm is. It's like, let's go for something big. Okay. And that's mostly what I wanted to share today from a word standpoint. I'll just check in on the chat here. I know you've all been listening, and I appreciate that. I'll play a little bit more. Middle C says, I'll have a deep think later and try and talk about what happens when I let go and kind of let my fingers take exploratory and creative paths. Good. So I think that's an interim goal for sure. Go do that. I think that's important. Fritz says, what was the biggest step for you to get to this creative stage making music? I think the biggest step for me was understanding everything that I've just shared from a vocal standpoint. It's like energy is everything, and being enthusiastic about music by creating a big goal. I'm sure you have enough common sense to know that if you're going to go play Carnegie Hall, and I have played Carnegie Hall in New York, if you're going to go do that, you have to have enough common sense to know that you're going to be well accepted by the audience, because if you go there with rudimentary skills, it might not work out so well. But just the thought of getting to Carnegie Hall, which is what I always ever wanted to do, it's the only thing I wanted. I asked my music teacher when I was 8, I said, hey, if I'm going to do this music thing, what's the goal? And he said, well, it's always been considered a high goal to reach Carnegie Hall. And I'm like, what's Carnegie Hall? Oh, it's this creative concert space in New York. And I'm like, well, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And he says, practice, practice, practice. So I've done that. I did that. But that's not the thing that got me there. The thing that got me there was energy. I can tell you it was connections through mine and obviously my wife Nancy's enthusiasm. How we got to Carnegie Hall came out of nowhere. It was not something that we had planned. It's just something we always wanted. And we managed to attract it just through connection. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'm sure that if anybody gets that opportunity, you're not going to go there unprepared. What you're going to do is you're going to witness the audience before you get there. You're going to pretend that that audience is with you, and you're going to practice from that perspective. When I practice music, I don't practice from the perspective of, oh, it's just for me. I practice because I know people are going to listen to it and hear it and be inspired and motivated by it. Whenever I post something on the Jazz Pianist group or on the YouTube channel or whatever I do, I know that others are going to be listening. So that's how I practice. I make music. The biggest, and to answer Fritz's question, which I think I am, the biggest step for me was understanding that everything is energy and that you have to be at an enthusiastic level of energy in order to attract greater things. And that will compel you to practice. That will compel you to get ready for big things. I hope that answers your question. All right, let me play just a little bit more. We are getting on with our time. I'm going to go back into swing momentarily because I feel like that's what's compelling me to perform at the moment. So let's play Body and Soul with a little bit of rhythm. Actually, you know what? Just for fun, let's change up the rhythm. We're not going to play it swing, but we are going to play it with a beat and a pulse. Let's see where that takes us. Allison says, Nancy, I don't know you, but I feel like I've been listening to a special love song for you, and I will pray for you. Every song I play lately has been laced with thoughts of Nancy and her well-being, and I'm going to come see you shortly, sweetheart. As soon as I'm finished here, I'm going to get in the car, and as you know, it's a half-hour drive to get to you, but I will be there shortly, and I look forward to seeing you again today. So thank you, Nancy, for being here. And for the rest of you who've joined me, and for all those who participated and had questions and comments, I really appreciate it. Walter says, thank you for the spirit full of enthusiasm and love expressed with body and soul. Thank you. You're welcome. And you'll notice that with that last little bit of body and soul, it had a pulse to it. It wasn't swing. It was like, it's like a 16th note feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's almost funk, right? And I think it's important to, with songs, especially tunes like Body and Soul that have such richness and special quality to them, to kind of explore the different rhythmic ideas that you can explore. There's a million other ways, obviously, to approach it from a rhythmic standpoint and also a harmonic standpoint. So I encourage you to do that. Hey, listen, it's been really fun hanging out with you today. If you haven't grabbed the sheet music, I'm going to leave it up for a little bit because I know a lot of people... it's not the full sheet music that I want to give you, so I'll let people download it for a little bit before I cut it off, and typically we only do it during the live session. But I'll leave it there for until I leave to go pick up Nancy, which should be, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And pick up. Go see, not pick up. I wish you were coming home, sweetheart. Yeah, so go grab the download. And I will see you all next week. Remember that in that download, there's a third page that has an IOU. So hold on to that, because anyone who downloads it, I will send you the transcription as soon as PJ in Poland finishes it. And once again, thank you for attending this Saturday live stream, and I hope to see you at the next one next Saturday, same time, same place. We'll see you then. Bye, everyone.